My business collapsed, and I lost my house overnight. I went to my son's place, hoping to stay for a few days. He said, "Dad, my wife isn't comfortable having you here." That night, I slept in my car. The next morning, a butler called me. He said his employer, a dying billionaire, had requested to see me before signing his will. My name is Edric Moyo. I am 61 years old. I am an African man born and raised in Bulawayo, Zimbabwe. For 35 years I worked as a civil contractor. Roads, small bridges, government tenders, private housing projects. I was known as a patient man, a disciplined man. People said I spoke less and worked more. I believed in planning, in saving, in family above all. I married my wife Ruth when I was 26. She was a school teacher. Gentle, principled. She died 8 years ago after a short illness. Since then my world narrowed to my work and my only child. My son Daniel. Daniel is 34 years old. He is an accountant by training. Smart, sharp tongue. Always believed he knew better. I paid for his education. Sent him to a private university in South Africa. Sold one of my trucks to cover his final year fees. I never complained. I believed a father invests without keeping receipts. For most of my life I lived comfortably. Not luxury, but dignity. A modest house in a good neighborhood. 2 cars. Savings. Respect. Until everything collapsed in 11 days. The collapse did not start with drama. It started with silence. A delayed payment from a government project. Then another. Then a sudden audit. Accounts frozen. Equipment seized pending investigation. Workers walking away because I could not pay wages. Lawyers asking for retainers I could not afford. Banks calling daily. I spent nights staring at ceilings counting debts instead of sheep. On the 9th day the bank auction notice came. On the 11th day I handed over my house keys. 40 years of work erased like chalk in rain. I packed what could fit into my old sedan. Clothes. My wife photograph. Some documents. I sat in the car outside the house that no longer belonged to me, and for the first time since my wife died I cried without trying to stop myself. I had nowhere to go. Pride argued with hunger. Pride lost. I drove to my son's place. Daniel lived in a gated estate on the other side of the city. A house with white walls. Security cameras. Trimmed hedges. I had helped him with the down payment 2 years earlier. He married Linda last year. Linda is 32, a lifestyle blogger, always dressed perfectly, always recording, always smiling at screens and frowning at people. I parked outside and took a deep breath. I reminded myself I was his father. Flesh and blood. I rang the bell. Daniel opened the door. His smile froze when he saw my suitcase. He looked behind me, then back at me. He asked what happened. I told him the truth in simple words. Business collapsed. House gone. I asked if I could stay a few days until I figured things out. He did not invite me in. He stepped outside and closed the door behind him. He rubbed his forehead like a man with a headache. He said, "Dad, Linda is not comfortable having you here. She needs her space. Maybe you can find a friend or a lodge. Just for now." I looked at his face. The same face I taught to shave. The same eyes that cried when I left for sights for weeks. I waited for him to laugh and say he was joking. He did not. I nodded. I said I understand. I told him not to worry. I picked my suitcase and walked back to my car. He did not stop me. That night I slept in my car at a petrol station. The seat would not recline fully. My back hurt. Mosquitoes found a way in. I watched headlights pass and wondered when my life had turned into a lesson about humility. At around 5 in the morning I washed my face in the station bathroom. I straightened my jacket. I told myself I was still Edric Moyo. I had survived worse. I would survive this. At 8:30 my phone rang. An unknown number. A calm male voice introduced himself as Samuel, a butler. He said his employer had requested to see me urgently. He said the employer was a dying billionaire. He said my name had been mentioned specifically. I asked how he got my number. He said his employer would explain. I almost laughed. Sleep deprivation does strange things to the mind. I thought it was a scam. Samuel gave me an address. A private estate near the hills. He said a car would be sent if I could not travel. Something in his tone made me listen. I drove there. The gate alone was taller than my former house. Guards checked my name. They let me in. I was led into a quiet room that smelled of books and medicine. On a large bed lay an old man. Thin, pale, eyes sharp. He asked me if I remembered him. I did not. He smiled weakly. He said his name was Thomas Van Rensburg. 78 years old. Mining, energy, investments. He said 30 years ago he was a young foreign investor cheated by local partners on a road construction project. He said everyone turned their backs on him except one contractor who refused to sign false documents. A man named Edric Moyo. Memory returned slowly. A dispute. Pressure to inflate costs. I had walked away from a lucrative deal. Lost friends over it. I remembered the man. Angry. Desperate. Honest. He said that decision saved his life. He said if he had signed those documents he would have gone to prison. He rebuilt everything after that. He said he had looked for me for years but lost contact. He said recently while preparing his will he wanted to correct unfinished gratitude. He said he had no children. His relatives were circling like vultures. He said he wanted to leave part of his estate to someone who once chose integrity over money. He said he knew my situation. He had investigators. I felt exposed. Small. I tried to refuse. He lifted a thin hand and told me not to insult him. He said accept it as balance. Not charity. Over the next 2 weeks I visited him daily. We talked. About business. About mistakes. About loneliness at the top. He grew weaker. One afternoon he asked me to read to him. I read from his favorite book. 2 days later he died quietly. The will was read a week after. I was present. So was Daniel, Linda, several relatives, lawyers, media waiting outside. Thomas left me a controlling stake in one of his private investment holding companies. Not cash. Control. He left me a residence, staff, and a monthly income that dwarfed anything I had earned before. Daniel stared at me like I was a stranger. Linda smiled too widely. After the meeting they rushed to me, hugged me, called me dad, said family should reunite, said my place was with them. I smiled. I told them I would think about it. I moved into the residence Thomas left me. I did not rush. I observed. I learned. I hired professionals. I stabilized the company. I re-entered business slowly. Smartly. I paid my old workers what I owed with interest. I rebuilt my reputation quietly. Daniel began calling daily, asking for advice, for investments. Linda sent messages suggesting content collaborations. She posted about family values, about honoring elders. People praised her online. I invited them for dinner one evening. They arrived dressed to impress. Daniel spoke about expanding his lifestyle, about needing capital. Linda talked about opening a wellness brand. I listened. I served food. Then I told them a story. About a man who lost everything. Who went to his son's house. Who was turned away. Who slept in his car. The room went quiet. I told them I had updated my own will. I told them that loyalty mattered more than blood. I told them I had established a foundation in my wife's name to support honest contractors and abandoned elders. I told Daniel he would receive exactly what he gave me that night. Shelter for one night. And silence. Linda cried. Daniel shouted. I stood up. I said I loved my son. But love does not mean erasing lessons. They left angry. Today I sit on the veranda watching the sun set over hills I once only drove past. I am not bitter. I am precise. I help those who stand by you when you fall. And I let those who push you away live with the echo of their choice. That is my revenge. And my peace. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And tell me, what would you have done if you were in my place?